On the edge of a quiet coastal town, where fishing boats painted the horizon every dawn, there stood a small blue cottage with peeling shutters and a wind chime that never stopped singing. In that cottage lived a woman named Miriam. Her back was slightly bent with age, and her hands were lined like delicate maps of time, but her laughter, soft and warm, could still fill a room. Children waved to her when they passed by. Shopkeepers saved her the freshest bread, not because she was wealthy or powerful, but because she carried peace wherever she went. Years earlier, Miriam had lost her husband to illness. They had never been blessed with children. She lived alone now, tending to her tiny garden of herbs and sunflowers, yet no one ever heard her complain. When storms ruined fishing nets or when the sea refused to give a good catch, she would simply say, "The tide always turns." One afternoon, as gulls cried overhead, a young mother named Elena hurried up Miriam's garden path. Her eyes were swollen from crying. "Miriam," she said, her voice shaking, "I don't know how much longer I can do this." Elena's husband had traveled inland months ago to work at a factory. Letters had stopped coming. Money hadn't arrived. The pantry shelves were nearly empty. "I lie awake every night imagining the worst," Elena whispered. "What if he never comes back? What if something happened to him?" Miriam poured her a cup of warm chamomile tea and handed it to her without rushing to speak. Instead, she asked gently, "When you imagine tomorrow, what do you see?" Elena stared at the steam rising from her cup. "I see more problems, more hunger, more waiting." Miriam nodded thoughtfully. "Let me tell you something I once learned. When I was a girl, I knew a lighthouse keeper named Thomas. He worked alone on the cliffs. One winter, terrible fog rolled in for weeks. Ships couldn't see the shore. Thomas grew anxious. "The fog will cause wrecks," he kept saying. "Disaster is coming." An older sailor visited him and said, "You cannot control the fog, but you can keep the light burning." Miriam paused, letting the wind chime fill the silence. Thomas realized that worrying about ships crashing would not clear the sky, but tending to the lamp each night, that he could do. So he focused on polishing the glass, trimming the wick, keeping the flame strong. And though the fog stayed for days, not a single ship was lost, because the light never failed. Elena looked up slowly. "What are you saying?" she asked. "I'm saying," Miriam replied softly, "that fear is like fog. It makes everything look worse than it is. But your thoughts, those are your lighthouse. If you let them go dark, everything feels hopeless. If you keep them steady, you can guide yourself through anything." Helena sighed. "But how do I just think differently? My problems are real." "Yes," Miriam said kindly, "they are real, but so is your strength." She leaned forward. "Tomorrow morning, before your children wake up, stand by your window, look at the ocean, and say out loud, 'Today, I will do what I can. I will not borrow sorrow from tomorrow.' Then spend your energy on what is in your hands, cooking, mending, comforting your little ones. Let hope be your habit." Elena didn't look convinced, but she looked thoughtful. The next morning, before sunrise painted the water gold, she stood by her window. She felt foolish at first, but she whispered, "Today, I will do what I can." Something small shifted inside her. That day, she visited neighbors and offered to sew torn clothes in exchange for vegetables. She baked bread for a fisherman's family and was given a basket of fresh sardines. She stopped imagining disasters long enough to notice opportunities. Days turned into weeks. Her circumstances did not magically transform overnight. There was still quiet nights, still waiting, but there was less fear. Her children noticed it first. "Mama, you smile more," her youngest said one evening, and she did. Then one bright afternoon, a letter arrived. Her husband had found steady work repairing railway tracks. He apologized for the silence. He had fallen ill for a time, but had recovered. Enclosed was money and a promise to return before winter. Elena didn't run to Miriam immediately. She stood still for a moment, holding the letter against her heart, because she understood something now. The good news felt wonderful, But the true change had begun weeks earlier, the day she chose to tend her own light instead of staring into the fog. Shine. When she finally visited Miriam, the older woman simply smiled as if she had known all along. "You see," Miriam said, "hope doesn't guarantee smooth seas. It gives you steady hands." Word quietly spread through the town. Fishermen began repeating Miriam's phrase before launching their boats. "Keep the light burning." Mothers whispered it while rocking crying babies. Even the bakery owner painted it on a small wooden sign behind the counter. Life in the coastal town remained imperfect. Storms still came. Nets still tore. Letters were sometimes delayed. But something had changed in the people. They stopped surrendering their peace to imagined futures. And in that little blue cottage by the sea, the wind chime continued to sing, reminding anyone who listened that while we cannot control every wave, we can always choose how brightly we let our own light shine.